Kevin again. This is me, another movie for you guys. Now, of course, this movie review I'm going to be doing is not for a theatrical release movie, but it is unfortunately for a television film. And this is a movie that I really was hoping would never see the light of day. For a while, it seemed like people were just not interested in this movie, that they were going to try to move away from it. And unfortunately, now we have it. And that is the remake, sort of reimagining of Dirty Dancing that ABC has done. And let's just get into this, because honestly, you guys know that I love musicals. It's no secret that I'm a huge musical fan, and I support anything that is musical, and I'm usually very critical, and usually I overhype something and it really disappoints me. This was really the first one that I had literally no interest in. I'll tell you guys why. Most of these musicals that either Fox or NBC has done, I have seen the need why they want to do that. They wanted to revitalize it back. Maybe it's a film that is a bit dated or something like that, or that people don't really talk about, and they wanted to bring it to a new audience. However, Dirty Dancing, on the other hand, I didn't really feel was necessary. And I'm a fan of the original Dirty Dancing, to be honest with you. I watched it about 3 years ago. You guys can check out my review on this channel. In fact, I think it's one of the better films of its kind. I'm not a huge fan of these, like, 80s dance films. I think some of them are, like, really cheesy now. They don't really hold up. Dirty Dancing is one of the few that I think is really a timeless film, and you didn't really need to remake it. So I didn't really understand why they wanted to do that. I didn't really feel like there was much of a need for it to happen, especially because people were trying to shut it down. And after watching this, damn, was this bad. Not only is Dirty Dancing a step down in basically every direction, it is without a doubt the worst we have seen of these television musicals, and is one of the lamest attempts to cash into something that's popular right now that I have seen in a very long time. And I'm getting into all of that, but let's get to the plot of Dirty Dancing, which, you know, the plot in the original, it's slightly different here. It's not exactly as you remember in the original. Basically, we do still have Baby and her family. They are vacationing over the summer. However, at this point, this isn't in a college that Baby's in, because no, Baby's only 18 in this one. Instead, they're in like this country club of sorts, and there is this dance club that basically Baby and her family are watching, and she runs into this guy, Johnny Castle, and Johnny Castle, basically, he is someone who is a very experienced dancer, and his partner, Penny, is basically in the midst of trying to have an abortion, and basically, Baby decides to ask Johnny for dance lessons as a way to pay for Penny's abortion, and that basically is the plot of Dirty Dancing overall, but there's a lot more to this movie than that. Let's just get off starting on with the cast. And that's the thing with this movie, is that most of these television musicals, I do think they have cast pretty well. Even the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I thought was a really weird choice, most of the people in that movie do have theater experience. And this movie, not really. There's not many people here who can be like, oh yeah, this is definitely someone who has the Broadway credentials and definitely should be in this film. There's really not many people that I think are really that great. Let's talk about our main star here, Abigail Breslin. Now, I'm a fan of Abigail Breslin. I think over the years, she's always done some really great stuff. I can remember back when she was just a little girl and she was doing like Little Miss Sunshine. She's always been a really good actress, and I think she definitely did try with this role of Baby. Unfortunately, she is sorely miscasted in basically every way. Baby as a character is someone who's supposed to be very naive and is basically having a sexual awakening of sorts, and Abigail Breslin, it just didn't feel the way. In fact, it kind of seemed like she was bored throughout the movie, and that they just didn't really give her what they wanted to. She definitely tried what she had, but I just didn't really feel like they gave her enough, honestly. It really did seem like they could have done a lot more of their character, but they just didn't. And Baby as a character is really not that great of a character in this. Her whole reason to join is because it's good for the soul, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Her character in general, I just didn't really care that much about. They didn't really develop her that much, honestly. I didn't really feel like we had much of an arc for her character. And, you know, the movie tries definitely to give her an arc, but I just didn't really feel like they did much with her. In the original movie, you really do get that sense that she goes from this very, you know, naive type, innocent teenager to a much more sophisticated woman. And here, I just didn't really feel like they did that transition that well, and I was not a huge fan of Breslin's acting. I just didn't really see her as much of a dancer to begin with, and she really just was not that great. I really thought she was very badly miscasted. But I will say, she is a hell of a lot better than what most of the cast does bring to the table. because as miscasted as Breslin is, nothing compares to one of the worst performances I have seen in a very long time from that of Colt Prattes. Okay, guys, so I've said this before. Most times when they cast a newcomer in these musicals, it's worked wonders for them. Whether it's been, Shanice Williams Shanice Williams in The Wiz Live, or it was Taylor Momsen, I believe, in Peter Pan Live. Usually this really does work to their advantage. Unfortunately here, that's not really the case, because not only is Colt Prattes really not that great, he can't act to save his life, and he really just, there's no charisma to him, unfortunately. And Patrick Swayze is just so iconic in that role, and really, he is kind of irreplaceable, in my opinion. I mean, you really can't replace what Patrick Swayze did here. And the fact that Colt Prattes couldn't even do that, he couldn't even bring his own thing to the table, is just really, really, it's just really disappointing, honestly. They didn't even try, he didn't even try with this character. Most of his lines, he just says like this, and he talks everything like this, and this obviously isn't that compelling for you to say every line like this. This guy just can't act. It's understandable why I haven't seen him before. This guy, yeah, he is a really good dancer. Yes, he is a good-looking man. But that's about it. There's really not much else to his character. He's boring. I definitely did not get into this. And you do not for a second see any chemistry between these two. The chemistry is definitely not there at all. In fact, it very much seemed like these two were kind of forced to like each other. Like, it doesn't feel natural at all. It feels like they were kind of like coerced into liking each other, and it wasn't really a natural thing. And obviously, that's not what we're supposed to feel here. Throughout the original, you get the sense that she really is starting to fall in love with him, even though she knows she really shouldn't be. And here, all of that deeper level is just kind of gone, and I really wanted more for these two in this relation, but I just didn't really get that chemistry for them. I just didn't really feel that these two were in love at all. I've heard many people say, and I'm going to say it again, it really did feel like a high school play, and it very much did feel the way. It felt like these were two people who really did not like each other in real life and were kind of forced to, and it really did not work out very well at all, and most of their scenes together, I just didn't care about. And when you don't care about the main two characters, you have a severe problem with your film, and pretty much everything else fails when it comes to those two characters. Now, in most cases, that would be it. I wouldn't talk about the other characters in this movie because the original, that's kind of it. They don't really develop the other ones that much. Well, that's not the case with this movie because, you see, they decided that they're not just going to remake this film. No, they're going to do a reimagining where they give other characters these really ridiculous arcs, and it was completely unnecessary. And let me just say, Debra Messing, I did think did a good job of what she had as this character of Marjorie, but they really did miss the mark on her arc. This is supposed to be a woman who's very dissatisfied with her husband. He's not really giving her a lot of time, and she's trying to have sex with him multiple times in the film. He just doesn't really seem to have a lot of time for her, and she kind of feels like she doesn't really exist, and I will admit, this was the best arc of the film. I definitely will say that. But again, it's just so, it's really just so underused, and they just didn't really use it as well as they could have. And the problem is, this is a character that just wasn't really all that compelling to begin with. She had about one line in the original film. I don't even remember this character really, and I get it, they wanted to develop her a little bit more, but it felt less natural and more just like, oh, Debra Messing's in this film, therefore we have to give her a lot to do, and I just didn't really feel like it needed to be there. I was not a huge fan of her. Bruce Greenwood, I thought, actually was the best in this entire movie, to be honest with you. I actually really did believe that he did not he wanted to have time for his wife, but he just didn't, and I thought they did a good job with him throughout the movie. He has this one song that he is pretty incredible, and of course, Bruce Greenwood's great. I loved him since American Crime Story, but again, he's just too good for this movie, honestly. I got the sense that these two, they were just too good for this movie. Debra Messing's a great actress, and Bruce Greenwood's a great actor. They're simply just too good for this movie. They seem bored throughout basically this entire thing, and you can completely understand why. They don't really have a ton to work with here. They're given this really boring plot, and the film tries to do a lot with it, but unfortunately, it doesn't really add anything. I didn't really think they added anything to the story. It just kind of seemed like it was tacked on here, and I just didn't really understand what they were trying to do there. Again, a valiant attempt, definitely, but they just didn't do much of that overall relationship, and just like the main two, they definitely had better chemistry than that of, Abigail Breslin and Colt Prattes. These two have been acting a lot longer in Hollywood, but again, I just didn't really get that sense that they were in love like the movie wanted me to. And then Sarah Hyland in this movie is also given a lot more to as Lisa. You know, in the original film, she was just kind of like the ditzy sister. That's really all she was. Here, that's not the case. Here, she is a lot more interested in music. She's kind of guy crazy, and she's got this really ridiculous storyline with this new character, Marco, who they really just added to the film for her to have this, like, racism plot, and the problem is they don't address it in the way you want them to. She sees this guy who wants to play with the ukulele. His father doesn't want her to hang out with him, and that's really all we get. The problem is, we don't really get to see her side of things. A lot of this time is just her going to this guy, and it's like they want to address racism, then address it, and they're just not doing it in the way they want to. It seemed like they didn't really know how to fit that into this movie. Why? Because it wasn't in this damn movie to begin with, and it doesn't really fit in here. It was the dumbest plot. I don't really know why this was here. Sarah Hyland has never really been that great of an actress. I think she was okay in this, but again, I just didn't really get the sense that these two needed to be in this movie, that we needed this plot here. It just felt so tacked on to everything else, and again, they're trying to develop these characters that just weren't all that compelling to begin with, and I just didn't really find a reason for them to really do that. I thought that was really unnecessary, and the only other two actually just to really talk about, Nicole Scherzinger here as Penny, I thought was okay. I didn't really feel much towards her. I thought most of her scenes, she really lacked the emotional vulnerability you're supposed to get for this character who's in pain throughout a lot of the movie, and then Katey Siegal in this movie is just awful, honestly. I was not a fan of Katey Siegal. Her character is so annoying. Most of this movie, she's just trying to sleep with Johnny, and she wants all these sexual favors from him, and they try to develop her a lot more. It really did not work at all. I was not a fan of her to begin with, and I have to say, most of this cast is just really disappointing. It's really sad how bad most of them did turn out, and it's one of the lamest attempts I have seen when it comes to casting for a musical in a while. So like I said, the acting's really not great, and when the acting does fail, pretty much everything else does. The main problem here is the directing by Wayne Blair, because holy shit did he not understand this story at all. Dirty Dancing is not supposed to be this complex sort of musical that has all these different things going on. It's supposed to be a simple, coming-of-age, self-contained story. That's the thing that Wayne Blair just didn't get, and I think that's really the problem that we have this film, is that there's a lot of tonal clashes throughout this movie. Sometimes the movie just wants to be this really fun romance, and then it'll get like really soapy for some reason, and I just didn't really understand why the movie decided to go in that direction. I thought just the tonal clashes really were not working at all. The original film was, yes, it was a drama, but it was, when it needed to be dark, it felt real. This just felt like they were trying to go darker, and they were trying to make it more modern. It just didn't work at all. I thought the directing just really was not great from Wayne Blair. He really did not understand this film, really in any way, and he was completely the wrong person to direct this movie. Let's talk about the screenplay, because again, this is basically the main thing that brings this movie down. Again, the movie was not that complex. It was a very simplistic film about a girl's sexual awakening. That's all it really was. It was about her learning to dance, realizing what she's good at, realizing her talent, and here, they just didn't really do much with that. Instead, you have her again, she's doing it because it feels good, and I just thought it was really dumb, honestly. It's clear they were trying to update this film. That's what it seemed like, at least. They said they were trying to go in a more modern direction. They fucking failed. They really didn't. I'll tell you guys why. These characters in general, again, they're just not the characters to do that. Dirty Dancing is not the property to do that, which I get it. They wanted to make these characters a little bit more independent, and they wanted to go through more sort of their own arcs and have more to do for them than just be the mom, just be the sister. But this is just not the film to do it with. I mean, you can do it with whatever you want. This is just not the right property for that. And I really do think the writing significantly brought this down, unfortunately. I mean, I didn't give a shit about what was going on with her sister and this random guy that she likes. I didn't care about that at all. I mean, the movie, it just doesn't address it in the way it should be. Again, it's supposed to be focused on the women, but it doesn't go to Sarah Hyland's perspective. It doesn't show how she really feels about this guy, why she really wants to be with him, him. They don't do much of that. There's like 3 scenes devoted to that throughout the entire movie. Debra Messing's character, we don't really get her side of things either. I mean, we get the sense that obviously she wants her husband to notice her, but again, just there's not enough time devoted to that, and they focus way too much on the sexual aspect of it all. And that's the other thing. They really tried to sexualize the story when they really didn't understand why the movie's called Dirty Dancing. The movie's called Dirty Dancing because the moves that Johnny Castle made in that film were considered risque back then. That's the only reason why. But no, they tried to make it a lot more sexualized. There's even a whole number where Katey Siegal is basically seducing him, and it was absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what they were really thinking with the writing, and again, their romance is just not really there. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like time has passed, really. In fact, that's the other thing. This movie, it doesn't feel like time has passed. I feel like this is all kind of happening in just the span of a week, and obviously, that's not the case. So we know that this is supposed to be throughout the entire summer, and it didn't really feel like much time has passed. They really did not do a very good job with showing that throughout the film. Even the dance scenes, I have to say, really were not that great. I was never really on board with the romance. I didn't really care about their romance ever, and any scene that they were on, I just was not really in. I feel like they could have done a really good job with it, just had they gotten a much better actor. Because like I said, Breslin did try, but I think because of how bad Colt Prattes was, it just didn't really translate well at all, and I really was not a fan of the writing here, I have to say. But the cinematography is surprisingly that's not even that great, honestly. I was not a fan of the cinematography. This really, I've seen better high school productions that have better sets than this do. The cinematography here was just so lame. It seemed like they really were holding back, and just like they were with the writing, where they weren't willing to really address things, it really seemed like they were holding back with the cinematography. Like, they didn't really have as big as a budget as they thought they could, and they instead decided to just have these really ridiculous sets that just were so simplistic, and it just looked so green screen, and I was not a fan of the cinematography at all. I did not really think it was that great. And it's just not appealing, really. A lot of the scenes are in, like, especially the scenes with dancing, they're just not really that well filmed, and I thought the cinematography really was not that great here. But let's talk about the most bizarre choice of this entire film, which has to be what they decided to do with the score, because we all know the original film. The original film is what's considered a dancicle. It's not a musical. There was an era in the 1980s where all of these dancing films were coming out, and they were really popular back then. That's why films like Dirty Dancing really did succeed. You know, there's also, like, Footloose, things I'm not a fan of Footloose, but it's just not really my cup of tea. Dirty Dancing is definitely closer to what I like. Footloose is kind of, not really my thing. My parents love it. I just don't particularly love it. But like I said, it wasn't a musical. So why the hell did they decide to have all the characters just randomly sing in this movie? I mean, it made no sense whatsoever, and I didn't really understand what they were trying to do here. Randomly, you'll have, like, a cover of a song, and then the characters just start bursting out singing, and at no point does it feel naturalistic. It just felt like they wanted these characters here because, oh, Debra Messing can sing. Oh, Katey Siegal can sing. Oh, Abigail Breslin can kind of sing. Colt Prattes, he can definitely sing, but I just didn't really feel like they needed that musical aspect in here. It really did divert away from the story, I have to say, and the performances in general really were not that great. The choreography is very half-assed. It really did not seem like they put much effort into it, and it didn't really seem like these people could really dance. It didn't really seem like Abigail Breslin could dance that well. And again, I just didn't really get the sense that this felt like, actual dancing. It felt very staged. It felt very just forced. And none of the songs really were that great. Even I Had the Time of My Life, they tried to turn into this whole, like, finale sort of number where everyone's singing, and it just didn't work at all. I don't know why they decided to make this into a musical. And it's not even a musical. The characters aren't bursting out into song throughout the film, and I don't understand why I decided to go in this direction. There was never broader production Dirty Dancing to begin with. Why are you making this a musical? I don't understand the reason to do that. You can do Dirty Dancing, but you don't have to make it a musical, and I don't understand why I decided to go in that direction. The other thing with the score is that it's so all over the place. Some points that sounds like 1960s music, and then you'll have some, like, poppy version by Grayson Chance of Hungry Eyes playing throughout this film, and it just doesn't mesh well together. And sure, the original film Johnny Castle does look like he's from the 80s, but it worked for that time period because it didn't feel like it wasn't 60s music. Most of the movie in that movie feels like 60s music. Here, this felt like it was kind of like both. Like they didn't really know if they wanted to go modern or if they didn't, and it just didn't work at all. You know, some was 60s music, some wasn't, and I was not a fan of that at all. I thought that was really all over the place, and it really didn't make for something that felt like they knew what they were doing. It really didn't seem like they were know what they were doing, honestly. It seemed like they were trying to appeal to everyone when they really should have just stuck to one demographic, and I get it. That's why they were trying to give more to Debra Messing. That's why they were trying to give more to Katey Siegal, because those people who grew up with the film are now around that age. I understand that, but they just didn't do enough with it, honestly. I wanted more, 60s music and less of this, you know, Lady Antebellum version of Hey Baby, this, like, Bea Miller version of Be My Baby. I don't need this stuff. I need actual 60s music, and some of it's not bad. Like, when most of the stuff that Johnson's a part of, J.K. Johnson, he actually did a really good job with. I like what J. Quinn Johnson did in this movie. He's actually very talented. His stuff is really good. The rest of the songs in this movie are just way too overly produced. It reminds me a lot of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where it's just way too overly produced, and some of it sounds like karaoke versions, honestly. Like, I've had the time of my life sound like a karaoke version. I was really not a fan of it at all. And again, the music just didn't really add much to this movie, and it should. You would think that, oh, the musical adds more, but it doesn't. It just makes this feel way too overbloated, and it just seemed like a lame attempt to really cash in on what NBC and Fox are doing. At no point did this feel like it needed to be here. It's just like, oh, NBC and Fox did it, so why don't we get in on the act? And it didn't really feel like they needed to do that. I don't really understand why I decided to go in that direction, and it really did deter from my overall enjoyment of the film. And also, the movie is 2.5 hours long, and it really did not need to be. Most of the time is just devoted to a lot of unnecessary subplots that just didn't really need to be there. If you guys haven't guessed by now, Dirty Dancing sucked. I really was not a fan of this remake at all. It is the exact opposite of what it really should be. It's trying to be modern. It's trying to give more to the characters who just aren't that compelling to begin with. And the ending, just why? I mean, they go in this really weird direction towards the end of the movie. I don't want to talk about, but to me it just seemed like a lame attempt to copy off of La La Land, and I don't know what they were really trying to do there. It made no sense whatsoever. No one really cared, honestly. Like, I didn't really feel like that was much of, there was much of, you know, someone who took an interest in that, and I don't know why I decided to go in that direction with the ending, which is very strange overall. Guys, Dirty Dancing, I can't really say disappointed me because I really was not looking forward to it at all, but it was so much worse than I anticipated. It is extremely half-assed. It is the exact opposite of what a musical production should be, and it shouldn't have even been a musical production to begin with. We didn't even really need it, and it just feels like a very lame attempt to cash in on the successes of other networks and really start competing with them, and it's just dumb the way I decided to go about that. Dirty Dancing was pretty terrible, and I am definitely going to give the remake of Dirty Dancing a 1 out of 5 or a D-. Not worth your time at all, guys. Just stick to the original. It's a lot better. It's, you know, it still does hold up well today. It still has some really good performances. This is just half-assed. It's unwatchable, and it's something that you're really going to regret watching the second it's done. So over, guys, Murray, the remake of Dirty Dance. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Loved your thoughts, and I know a lot of people absolutely hated this thing. You guys, I wanted to go in hoping to like it. I didn't want to hate this thing, but I really could not stand this, I have to say. It's the complete opposite of what I wanted it to be, and I just found it to be really just, again, it's half-assed. That's the problem with this. It's too half-assed. It doesn't really feel like any effort was really being put into it. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. I will see you guys in my next video, which I think will be for Fargo. Don't quote me on that, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.